You ever notice that you were actually happier back when you had less? Not more money, not more things, not more stress. Just barefoot outside, belly full, and laughter that carried you all the way into the night. Think about it. The time you felt the most alive wasn't when you got a new iPhone or some fancy sneakers. No, it was when you were running outside with no shoes at all, chasing your friends in the street, or climbing a tree you had no business climbing, or waiting for your turn to jump into the river. And if you grew up Caribbean, you already know that barefoot life wasn't a sign of poverty. It was freedom. Your toes in the dirt, a mango in your hand, the sun beating down, and your only worry was whether your cousin was going to cheat in marbles again. Jeez, what a life. But here's the thing no one tells you. They sold you a life. Because the world tells you that happiness comes with more. More things, more upgrade, more hustle. But deep down you felt it. The more you chase, the emptier you feel. And here's the twist. When you had less, you actually had more. More joy, more peace, more connection. Listen, if you grew up Caribbean, you know what connection looked like. It was 20 cousins in one house, 3 people sharing a fan, everybody laughing while granny in the background cussing. But what I found out next changed everything. See, when you didn't have much, you were forced to appreciate the small things. The sweetness of a guinea, the coldness of river water on a hot day, the sound of your neighbor calling you to come eat food, because in their kitchen, everybody was family. Now you've got streaming, smartphones, 24-hour everything, and you're more anxious than ever. Meanwhile, back in the day, your biggest notification was your mother shouting your full government name from the veranda. And you ran, because if she reached that third call, trouble. But here's where it gets even worse, because somewhere along the line you felt that happiness you felt as a kid wasn't real, that it was just innocence. And once you became an adult, joy had to be replaced with stress. And so you stopped chasing chickens in the yard, you stopped playing outside until the sun went down. You know what I mean. You stopped sitting around and laughing with people until your belly hurt. And so in return, you got bills, burnout, and a timeline full of people pretending to be happy, even though deep down they're miserable. Here's the part no one wants to admit though. You were happier with less, not because of what you had, but because of what you didn't have. You didn't have constant comparison. You didn't have the pressure of having to always prove yourself. You didn't have the weight of always needing more. But you had freedom. And if you're Caribbean, you understand this on another level. We grew up hearing money can't buy happiness, and it sounded like an excuse at first, right? But now look around. Some of the wealthiest people are miserable. Meanwhile, the happiest laughter you've ever heard was coming from kids with no shoes, splashing each other at the standpipe. Yeah, it's true. But here's the twist. Nobody tells you. You don't actually miss the things. You miss the peace you had when life was simple. Because back then, happiness wasn't on your phone. It wasn't in your bank account. It was in your chest. It was in your laughter. It was in the people around you. And here's the crazy part. When you had less, you actually had more. More time, more laughter, more of you. But what I found out made me stop in my tracks, because it proved why people today are more stressed, more lonely, and more tired, even though they have everything they once prayed for. Think about it. Back then, joy was free. A stick became a cricket bat. A stone became a marble. A tire was a toy that rolled faster than any iPad game. If you grew up Caribbean, you know this life. 3 slices of bread fed 6 kids. The whole street shared 1 pot of soup. Nobody had much, but nobody felt empty. And the shocker is, you thought that was normal, but no, you realize that was rare. Let me admit something that the world today don't want to talk about. Sometimes you're happier when you have less. Not because poverty is fun, not because the world is easy, but because less forces you to see joy in the small things. It forces you to slow down. It forces you to feel gratitude for what was in front of you. But here's where it gets even deeper. Back then, you could laugh for hours with nothing but conversation. Today, People can't last 5 minutes without checking their phone. And that right there explains everything. We traded connection for distraction. We traded community for content. We traded real peace for quick dopamine. In the Caribbean, happiness wasn't the thing you bought. It was the way the sun kissed your face while you picked mangoes or star apples. It was the breeze rocking you to sleep on a veranda. It was the whole yard gathering around one TV, even though a few people would never be able to see the 13-inch screen. You had less, but somehow, your heart was full. And maybe that's why now it feels so difficult, because when you had less, you were closer to the source. You didn't realize it at the time, but God was showing you that peace didn't come from things. It came from Him. And sometimes, it's when you have nothing, it's the lack that teaches you abundance. So here's the truth. You didn't just survive with less. You thrived. You laughed louder. You loved deeper. You trusted more. And that's the exact opposite of what the world tells you now, that happiness lives in more. But what if the opposite is true? Let's be real. You thought more money, more stuff, more status would fill the gap. But you know by now it never does, because happiness isn't found in what you've gained. It's found in what you give, what you share, and what you notice. That's why these barefoot moments felt so pure. That's why a simple plate of food felt like a feast. That's why you can still remember that sound of laughter echoing under a street light years after. And here's the thing, the reason you miss those days isn't because you had nothing. It's because you had everything that actually mattered. Time, peace, people, and that's what the world is desperate for right now. And they can't seem to buy it. Ask anyone who grew up in the islands, and they'll tell you happiness was never the fancy things. It was barefoot in the dirt or the grass. It was mango juice running down your elbow. It was sitting on the veranda talking stories until the crickets start singing. We didn't have much, but we were rich in joy. And deep down, you know that's true. So maybe the real question isn't why was I happier with less? Maybe the question is, what's stopping me from being that happy again? Because here's the secret. You don't have to go back to childhood. You don't have to give up everything. You just have to remember that happiness was never in the things. It was always in the moments. It was always in the people. And it's still in you. So tell me one memory that proves you were happier with less. Drop it in the comments. And if you grew up Caribbean, leave a mango emoji so the real ones know. Because true wealth was never things. The wealth is peace. And it's not just a destination, it's the journey. Watch this next video.